In Animal Crossing, there's many ways to pay off your debt. You can catch and sell fish, or bugs. You could dig up and sell fossils. You could take advantage of the turnip stock market. Or, in the case of New Horizons, you can just spin a cardboard box. And by doing this, speedrunners are able to pay off all their debts in record time, and I'm going to attempt to break it all down in this video. But first, I want to mention that this video is sponsored by Able Sisters. Able Sisters is a family-owned clothing store with the latest fashion, and by liking this video, you'll get 5% off your first purchase. Now, let's pay off some debt. For anyone new to the Animal Crossing series, one of the main objectives of the game is paying off debt associated with your house. I know that doesn't sound fun on paper, but somehow it is. Each time you expand or upgrade to a bigger house, the debt exponentially increases. Here's a breakdown of the cost for each house upgrade in New Horizons. Upgrading to the biggest house means collecting and paying off a total debt of 5,696,000 bells. Bells being the currency in Animal Crossing. That's a lot of money that would take the average player many months to pay off, maybe even years. But speedrunners aren't your average players, and they have found a way to pay off all debts in New Horizons in a bit over an hour. The timer for this all debt speedrun category starts upon the fade out by launching the game with no pre-existing save data, and ends on the villager's fist pump when the fist is fully raised in the air after paying off the final debt. It's here I should mention that the speedrun category is exclusive to the pre-version 1.21, and that's because the glitch utilized in this run was patched out in later versions shortly after the release of the game. So unfortunately, that means if you wanted to attempt the speedrun yourself, you would likely need a modded switch to downdate to an older version of the game. What's also important to note are the Joy-Con speedrunners play with, as playing with Animal Crossing New Horizons Joy-Cons will likely result in a faster time paying off all the debts. That's because when you play with the New Horizons Joy-Cons, you'll be gifted a New Horizons Nintendo Switch item on day 1, which sells for 1,500 bells more compared to the regular Nintendo Switch item that you would normally get. The Nintendo Switch item, in addition to the cardboard box, are the keys to speedrunner success in this run, which you'll see why a bit later. And finally, speedrunners make sure they have a second account on their Switch, as another key to the speedrun is utilizing local co-op multiplayer, which you'll also see why a bit later. But for now, let's jump into the run, specifically speedrunner Pants' run. Pants was the second speedrunner to set a record in this category, and held a world record time for 3 years and 10 months, so I had reached out to Pants for some details on the run. Before jumping into the run, Pants sets the time and date of his Switch to 4:51 AM on January 1st, 2000. The year doesn't really matter, but the day, month, and time definitely do, and this is done to help pay off their first debt faster. A new currency in New Horizons are Nook Miles, which can be redeemed for a variety of items, capabilities, and recipes, and are also needed to pay off the first debt, 5,000 Nook Miles to be exact. To earn Nook Miles, players have to complete various activities on the island or achieve certain goals, like how you can get 2,000 Nook Miles for it being your birthday. The reason speedrunners changed their Switch date to January 1st is because when registering their island, they need to choose the month and day of their birthday. The game automatically starts on 1/1, which is January 1st, and obviously it's faster for speedrunners to just select this date right away instead of scrolling through the numbers to pick another date. And the reason speedrunners change their Switch time to around 4:50 AM is because they can do the first part of the run in under 10 minutes, and then have the day reset, as new days are only counted at 5 AM. And this will give them the 2,000 Nook Miles for your birthday, as the game only checks for this if it's a brand new day. This, in addition to the 500 Nook Miles given at the start of the game, means speedrunners already have half the amount of Nook Miles needed to pay off their first debt. You'll also notice Pants is playing the game in simplified Chinese, and that's because, like almost every speedrun category, it's the fastest to play in. I believe the loading of the game is also the fastest in this language, and there's a lot of loading in New Horizons. One of the first tasks on the island is selecting where to lay your tent, and Pants quickly places his tent right behind Nook's tent, so that it is fast to reach from the plaza when you eventually have to lay down your cot in your tent and go to sleep. Another early task is meeting the 2 villagers you start with on your island, and this is where some RNG comes into play. The villagers can be found walking around the island close by to the plaza, but they aren't always in the same spot or area, so you have to run around finding both of them. Depending how far or close these villagers are, not only in relation to the plaza but also themselves, will have an impact on speedrunners' times. After that's done, speedrunners are then tasked with finding 10 sticks so that villagers can make a fire, and 6 fruits for snacks. And that means more RNG, as sticks and fruit trees are randomly scattered throughout the island. And when it comes to collecting the sticks, there are 2 different approaches I've seen. While some speedrunners only run around collecting 10 sticks off the ground, Pants also decides to keep shaking a tree until a few sticks fall from the tree. The current world record speedrunner does not do this, but Pants also had the world record time for almost 4 years, so it's hard to say which is the better approach. Once that's done, it's now nighttime, and speedrunners race off to grab their cot from Tom Nook, and then make their way to their tent they placed earlier, place the cot, and jump on top to go to sleep. And that's the tutorial day done. Players then wake up to Tom Nook outside their tent, which is not creepy at all, where he gives you a Nook phone and tells you about the 5,000 Nook mile debt you owe to pay for the tent. Now, this is where the speedrun gets interesting. Pants immediately takes out the New Horizons Nintendo Switch from his mailbox, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a gift you receive on day 1 when playing with the New Horizon Joy-Cons. He then goes into Nook's shop, takes out a cardboard box from the recycle box, and then runs outside to place the cardboard box on the ground and the Nintendo Switch on top of the box. The box placement isn't too important, but ideally it's placed as close to Nook's shop as possible, as speedrunners will be making a lot of trips between the box and Nook's tent. It's also ideal to not have anything on the ground close to the box, so that speedrunners can avoid accidentally picking up something else like a stick instead of the Nintendo Switch. At this point, speedrunners save and exit out of the game, only to jump right back into the game, but under a different Switch account. That means setting up a new resident. And one cool feature of New Horizons is that up to 4 residents on the same island can play together simultaneously on one Nintendo Switch console. So how will these residents spend their time together? If you guess spinning a cardboard box, then you'd be half right, because while one resident spins the box, the other resident picks up the Nintendo Switch on the box, over and over and over again, until they picked up 20 Nintendo Switches. For anyone who's never played Animal Crossing, this is not how the game works. Once you pick up an item, it's in your inventory, and not where you picked it up from. What we're seeing here is known as duplication, a glitch that allows you to duplicate an item as much as you want. The glitch requires 2 players, one to grab the item and one to spin the box, and works on the fact that the object is being interacted with 2 different players in different ways on the same frame. Altering the box position with the item on top keeps the object the same. So when using the other player to grab the item on top on the same frame as the spinning animation, it allows the player to keep the item on top of the box and have another in the inventory. I'm not sure who first discovered duplication, but it's a glitch that's been around since the very first Animal Crossing, and in the case of New Horizons, speedrunners abuse it to pay off all their debts. At the start of the game, your inventory can only hold 20 items, so with 20 Nintendo Switches in their pockets, Pants runs to Nook's shop to sell them all. This is why it's important to have the box set up close to Nook's shop, to save on time traveling in between. This is also why you're likely to have a faster time in the speedrun category playing with Animal Crossing New Horizon Joy-Cons, as 20 Animal Crossing Nintendo Switches sell for 179,800 bells, compared to 20 regular Switches, which sell for 149,900 bells. By duplicating and selling an item worth more money, you'll be making more money faster, which means you're likely to pay off all your debts faster, and this is evident as the top 5 speedrunners in this category played with New Horizon Joy-Cons. You can tell these speedrunners are committed because this part of the run is very repetitive. It's just constantly spinning the box, picking up switches, and selling switches. And it takes, give or take, 40 minutes to do it enough times to make enough money to pay off 5,696,000 bells of debt. Doing the math, that's 32 times this process has to be done, except it can be cut down to 28 times by relying on New Horizons savings account and interest system, which I'll explain shortly. And it's not like you can click a button and sell all 20 switches at once. You have to take the time to select each switch individually in order to sell them all at once. This process also involves taking the time to drop any excess money bags, as your wallet only holds 99,999 bells. So anything extra is put in the inventory. But to make the most of their trips, speedrunners want a completely empty inventory so they can pick up the max possible amount of switches. But before bells can be used to pay off debts, the first debt requires 5,000 Nook miles. I already explained how speedrunners got 2,000 Nook miles for their birthday, plus 500 for simply starting the game. That means 2,500 more Nook miles are needed. There are many different ways to collect Nook miles, but for this speedrun category, the fastest ones include the following: 300 Nook miles for posting on the bulletin board, 300 Nook miles for editing your passport, 300 Nook miles for taking a photo on the Nook phone, 300 Nook miles for opening the Nook phone 10 times, 300 Nook miles for selling an item, 300 Nook miles for spending bells, 300 Nook miles for purchasing an item from Nook Shopping through the ABD machine, and 500 Nook miles for simply editing a custom design, even if it's just 1 pixel. You also get 50 Nook miles for just accessing the ABD machine. From what I can tell, different speedrunners have slightly different approaches when racking up Nook miles, but these are the ones Pants collected in his run. When a debt is paid in New Horizons, your house is upgraded, or I guess in this specific moment, your tent is upgraded to a house, and you get to pick the color of your roof. So speedrunners just pick the first color to save time, which is the red roof. At this point, Pants saves the game, and changes the date on his Switch by 1 year, making it 2001. And this is done to take advantage of the interest system. By having bells in your savings account, you'll receive monthly interest. And in New Horizons, the interest cap is hit after a few months. But speedrunners fast forward by a year because it's less menuing and thus faster. But there's another interesting thing to note about pre-version 1.21. Post versions and currently, players receive 0.05% interest on their bells on the first of each month, up to a maximum of 9,999 bells. But before version 1.20, the interest rate was 0.5%, and the maximum was 99,999 bells. This is how speedrunners cut down on the amount of times they need to use the dupe glitch, because once a house is upgraded, it won't be built until the following day. So they already have to exit out of the game and change the date. So by changing the date by a year, they make 99,999 bells because of all the money they have in the savings account from selling so many Switches. And given their 7 upgrades, and thus 7 times the date is changed by a year, that's 699,993 bells made just from interest. Cutting down the interest rate from 0.5% to 0.05% was a huge change, and one not many people were likely happy about. But hey, at least we all got a bell bag rug from the bank as an apology. But yeah, that's how speedrunners pay off all their debts in New Horizons in a bit over an hour, by utilizing the dupe glitch, taking advantage of the interest system, and finding creative ways to get Nook miles faster, like setting the date to January 1st. If you too don't appreciate your time and want to try this run yourself, then again, you would need a modded Switch to play pre-version 1.2.1. I just want to say thank you again to Pants for answering some of the questions I had on this run and allowing me to use this footage. I hope you enjoyed this video. If there are any other speedrun categories you want me to cover, then please let me know, and I'll catch you in the next video. I want to give a special shout out to Rebecca Lyons, Le Burb, Puddles Megan, Koi 13, and Liam Help.